You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Holonet Podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. I'm Matt Holloway. Coming up this hour, we have a great show lined up for you. We're going to talk about what unites us rather than what divides us. And we're going to talk about a great group of people who are going to be meeting in just 2 weeks to do just that, bring unity and not division to our country. We're going to talk about everything that is wrong with this concept of impeaching President Donald Trump and why this is what nobody wants. Even the liberals don't want this, and it's just mental for people like Maxine Waters to recommend it. We're also going to talk a little bit about Syria and the horrific events that have befallen there and the recent chemical attack and the response to it, or lack thereof, from the United Nations that I saw today. And we're also going to talk just a little bit about what really matters to the American people going forward. Where we need to be as far as actions are concerned, and where we need to be as far as culture is concerned. All that and more coming up here on the Holonet Podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. Stick around.
You're listening to the Holonet on Lanterns Media Network. The millennial conservative resistance begins here.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Matt Holloway, and you're listening to the Holonet Podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. Thanks for joining us. Got a lot to go over today. Not all of it's pleasant, but I think all of it needs to be said. First, I want to start out with one positive. Some feel-good news coming out of Phoenix, Arizona. On April 22nd, March for America is going to be holding a unity rally at the Capitol here in Phoenix, Arizona. And a great bunch of patriots are putting this together. Amongst them, the man who invited me to speak at this event, Steve Robinson. And he put together a wonderful piece of video that if you want to check it out, it's on YouTube. You can also find it. I'll share it on the Holonet Facebook page. But it really lays out what the purpose of this rally for unity is. And while it is uniting behind our government and behind our president, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to suddenly flip a hard 180 if you're never Trump and become ever Trumper. It doesn't mean that, you can't bring along your liberal friends and try to spread the concept of unity between countrymen, and that's a lot of what I'm going to discuss when I get my 15 minutes up there. Other guest speakers are going to include Dr. Kelly Ward, who is a friend of the show and is a great patriot who unfortunately lost her bid for Senate in 2016, but is running again against incumbent Senator Jet Flake here in Arizona. But we're going to go to some quick audio now from the Red, White, and Blue Revolution, Phoenix, Arizona, and Mr. Steve Robinson. So take a listen to that.
My name is Steve Robinson. I support March for America because I believe that unity is what this country so desperately needs right now. We the people are all so focused on what divides us that we forget about what ties us all together. We take for granted this wonderful land that we all call home. No matter where you come from or what you believe, we're all fellow Americans and we should come together and stand united as one. Please join me on April 22nd at the state capitol, and we will stand united for each other and for the love and appreciation of this strong and beautiful America. United we stand, my friends.
That was Steve Robinson of March for America. He's a good guy. Steve and I actually met when I was doing some coverage for theblaze.com almost a year ago. God. He and his group, Patriots Arizona, were protesting the lack of an indictment for then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. They were protesting in front of the FBI building out here in Phoenix, Arizona, and I got to spend the afternoon with them. And I'm happy to report that, I did accept their offer to come speak to this group out in front of the Phoenix Capitol. I will be there on April 22nd, so if you're in Arizona or if you're nearby or you're passing through and you can come join us, that'd be fantastic. I'd love to shake your hand, meet you, and hear all about you and what your thoughts are on where our nation is today. And kind of have that conversation in person. So that'd be great. So if you want to come and hear me speak, obviously if you're listening to my podcast, you enjoy hearing me speak, or you hate hearing me speak and you want some troll fuel. Either way, if you want to come and spend some time with some great patriots who are trying to bring the nation together instead of drive it apart, then come on by. It's going to be from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. That's Pacific Standard Time in Phoenix, Arizona at the Capitol. That's the March for America Red, White, and Blue Revolution Rally for Unity, or Unity Rally here in Phoenix, Arizona. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm stoked. Still have no clue what I'm going to say. Might get booed off stage. That'd be cool. I'm going to see if we can possibly do a Facebook Live situation from the actual rally, so I can kind of take you along with me. My phone's kind of garbagey because I have absolutely destroyed it. I have an LG G5 and hashtag not a sponsor, but hey LG, give me a call. But I have an LG G5 here, and I actually did all my Facebook Live spots for the Blaze with this bad boy, and it's got a dual camera on the back. The camera casing is shattered, so I'll be using the camera that still works. It overheats constantly. I need a new phone. So on that note, if you want to donate to get Matt a free phone, please log on to theholonet.com, Patreon/theholonet.com. Never mind, you're not going to buy me a phone. But anyway, it was worth a shot, right? So, this event, Red, White, and Blue Revolution, Phoenix, Arizona, again, it's going to be about unity. It's going to be about reaching across the aisle and reaching across to each other on the conservative side of the aisle as well. Because... and, I might burn some of my material here that I'm planning to use there, but whatever. It's important to tell you today. We've gone from being polarized for the past 8 years, polarized left and right, to being balkanized. Now, if you need to grab a dictionary on that one, it's not a phrase that's used very often. Balkanization is where you break up into sects. It's so named because of what happened to the Balkans post the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, and then later on again post the collapse of Yugoslavia. So Balkanization, breaking into smaller pieces that are aligned by ethnicity or that are aligned by religious or political belief. And that's precisely what's happening even within our own conservative realm of thought. You have your never-Trumpers, you have your ever-Trumpers, which sound a little bit too alike to me. It gets confusing. But you have your people who are like dyed-in-the-wool Ted Cruz supporters. And I was a big Ted Cruz supporter in the primary. But when Ted Cruz lost the primary and Donald Trump won, I said he's not the candidate we wanted, but he's the candidate we got. And I'm sure as heck not going to vote for Hillary Clinton. So that's kind of where I came along into the picture. And I've given my word that I'm going to give President Trump his due. I'm going to give him his chance. And when he does great things, I'm going to shout out that he does great things. When he does lousy things, I'm also going to shout out that he does lousy things. Because that's my job. I'm a political commentator. My job is to bring you the truth. My job is not to bring you my truth. My job is to bring you the truth of the matter with my opinions and to tell you which is which. Okay? So I want to also go to some quick audio today from the Facebook Live of President Donald Trump out in front of the White House with King Abdullah II of Jordan. King Abdullah II has got to be the coolest Middle Eastern leader since Benjamin Netanyahu. And, if you haven't looked into this guy, check him out. before being king, brigadier general in the Jordanian military, and not because he was a prince alone, not by merit of his position or his birth. This guy actually went and did the training and did his duty, was a Cobra helicopter pilot. This guy rained some hellfire on people. Okay? Real deal. King Abdullah II, probably one of the best allies we have in the area right now, short of our Israeli brothers and sisters. So I'm going to play some great audio from there, and he's a very well-spoken man. His wife, for God's sakes, Queen Reina of Jordan, worked for Apple before she became queen. You're not going to find a more pro-Western, pro-American Arabic leader. And they really are Arabic in every sense of the word. Historically speaking, the Kingdom of Jordan is referred to as the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan because the Hashemite dynasty ruled previously, about 100 years ago. They ruled what was then called the Hejaz, which is the southern section of Saudi Arabia where Mecca and Medina are located. Mecca and Medina and the Hejaz were conquered by Saudi Arabia and the Al Saud dynasty just shortly after, in the late 20s, I believe it was. And then following the British mandate of Jordan and of Israel and of Iraq as well, the Hashemites, the dynasty that ruled the Hejaz, soon became kings in Jordan, in Syria, and also in Iraq. You had King Faisal, who was the very short-lived king of Syria, and actually died as king of Iraq, and had his son and his grandson succeed him before being toppled by the Ba'ath Party, by the Baathists and Saddam Hussein in the 50s. So I know I got a little deep in Middle Eastern history there, but these guys are the real deal. The royal family of Jordan, and they did a big kind of heel-face turn. You know, when King Abdullah II took over for his father, you see a sudden detente with Israel and a sudden warming of relations. You suddenly see Christians able to go to the Temple Mount again. You suddenly see the Christian reliquaries being restored, and a lot of that is thanks to him. So I'm not going to sit here and just give you the accolades of King Abdullah II. Look him up. He's a cool guy. I mean, I'm a big Trekkie. If you listen to my show at all, you know. This guy guest starred on Star Trek Voyager. I'm not kidding. He actually had a walk-on role in Star Trek Voyager, no spoken text because he's not a member of SAG, the Screen Actors Guild. But he was dressed up, I think he was like a science ensign, and he was in the background of a scene. So that's cool. So, guys, royalty, military kicks a lot of tail. Cobra pilot, brigadier general, now king of Jordan, and he's been dealing out some harshness to ISIS and bringing it to them on their own court. So this is the guy. So the fact that President Trump is getting on well with him is a good sign. And a lot of people are slamming President Trump because he's been silent on his response to Syria. But he has a good explanation for that. I'm not a Trump apologist, but I think he's on the right track here, and I'm going to play you that audio when we come back from this break. Now, you're listening to the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Radio Network. I'm Matt Holloway. Stick around. Hey everybody, Matt Holloway here. I wanted to take a moment to talk to you about an amazing group of patriot entrepreneurs. Hot Pants LLC of Arizona is a welding, fabrication, and metallurgy company specializing in display weaponry and shields. A veteran-owned and operated company, they create interesting items inspired by their customers' ideas as well as beautiful custom pieces of their own design. They are certified welders, credentialed by the Arizona Automotive Institute and Tidewater Community College, with a background experience from the U.S. military and the shipping industry. Hot Pants specializes in creating weaponry for cosplay, anime, video games, and the zombie apocalypse. No matter what your imagination can dream up, they can create a slew of interesting, creative weapons and shields ideal for any costume or outfit. If you're engrossed in the world of video games or role-playing, let them arm your character with unique, high-quality weapons. You won't be disappointed by their artistry and attention to detail. Give them a call today at 602-900-6856. That's 602-900-6856. Order online at www.hotpantsmetal.com. That's HOTTPANTS metal.com. Also there on Facebook at facebook.com/hotpantsllc.
You're listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The millennial conservative resistance begins here.
All right, everybody, we're going to come to some audio here, courtesy of Fox News via Facebook. Give me just a second to get that queued up. Now, this meeting took place, I want to say about 10 o'clock in the morning, Pacific Standard Time. This was President Donald Trump holding a joint press conference with King Abdullah II of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan at the White House Rose Garden. So we're going to go to that audio real fast. And just check this out, because he gets pushed really hard on providing an answer to precisely what the U.S. response to the horrific chemical weapons attack in Syria is going to be. If you haven't heard about that attack, it's absolutely god-awful. In what the U.S. intelligence services are calling an attack by the Syrian Air Force, a chemical weapons attack. Approximately 100 people, many children, were killed, and approximately 400 people were seriously wounded or sickened by the attack, and it appears that the attack was conducted with sarin gas. An absolutely horrible nerve agent, and the pictures and videos coming out of Syria have been incredibly disturbing. I do not recommend that you watch them with your children in the room at all or review those. And as a new father, it was very, very, very hard for me to watch. Excuse me, getting a little choked there. But I'm going to go ahead to this audio, and I think President Trump acquits himself extremely nicely to the reporters that are demanding a precise response from the White House and exactly what we're going to do to respond to this, and I think he answers it quite well. We'll go to President Trump now.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to follow up on Julie's question and press you a little more on Syria. How will you distinguish your policy and your actions on Syria from the inaction that you criticized of the previous administration? You say it's now your responsibility. What should we see or what should we look for that will be different? And, Your Majesty, I'd like to ask you, what gives you, this is now your second meeting with the President, what gives you the optimism that Mr. Trump will succeed in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, where so many others have failed before him, to be a broker for peace?
I like to think of myself as a very flexible person. I don't have to have one specific way, and if the world changes, I go the same way. I don't change. Well, I do change, and I am flexible, and I'm proud of that flexibility. And I will tell you that attack on children yesterday had a big impact on me. Big impact. That was a horrible, horrible thing. And I've been watching it and seeing it, and it doesn't get any worse than that. And I have that flexibility, and it's very, very possible, and I will tell you it's already happened, that my attitude toward Syria and Assad has changed very much. And if you look back over the last few weeks, there were other attacks using gas. You're now talking about a whole different level. So, as you know, I would love to have never been in the Middle East. I would love to have never seen that whole big situation start. But once it started, we got out the wrong way, and ISIS formed in the vacuum, and lots of bad things happened. I will tell you, what happened yesterday is unacceptable to me.
Can I follow up, sir? Last year you seemed to be reluctant to get involved or to intervene in Syria directly. Is that one thing that's changed after yesterday?
Well, one of the things I think you've noticed about me is militarily, I don't like to say where I'm going and what I'm doing. And I watched past administrations say, we will attack at such and such a day, at such and such an hour. And you, being a warrior, you would say, why are they saying that? And I'm sure you sat back in Jordan and you said, why are they saying that? I watched Mosul, where the past administration was saying, we will be attacking in 4 months. And I said, why are they doing that? Then a month goes by and they say, we will be attacking in 3 months, and then 2 months, and then we will be attacking next week. And I'm saying, why are they doing that? And as you know, Mosul turned out to be a much harder fight than anyone thought. And a lot of people have been lost in that fight. I'm not saying I'm doing anything one way or the other, but I'm certainly not going to be telling you, as much as I respect you, John. Thank you.
Now, President Trump is dead spot on here, and I've been saying this crap for the last 8 years. Every time I would hear a news report where the President of the United States has issued a statement that they will be pulling out of Mosul or pulling out of Iraq in such and such a date, and we plan to wind down our military forces in Afghanistan over the next couple of days. And I'm just banging my head into the keyboard just over and over and over, saying, why in the world are they telegraphing their punches? Why in the name of God would you let your enemies know precisely when you plan to pull out? If I were the Taliban, I'd just hang back, chill, and wait for that day to come up on the calendar, and then boom, I would slam straight into Kandahar with absolutely everything that I had. I would sack the capital the day after American forces leave. If I was in that position. Why? Because that's strategically intelligent. So, of course, the president is not going to give you a direct concept of what options he's going to utilize. Is he going to utilize diplomatic channels to exert pressure on the Assad regime? Is he going to hit him in the United Nations? Is he going to build a coalition to target actual land forces in Syria? Is he going to launch a strategic airstrike? Is he going to employ cruise missiles? Is he going to use drone warfare? He has all these things that are at his disposal. Why in the world would you press him to find out exactly what his response is going to be? And I'm going to show you, I'm going to play you some audio here from the United Nations, from UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, who has assumed the rotating post of President of the Security Council, the United Nations Security Council, and was very unequivocating in laying this horrific tragedy at the feet of the Russian Federation because they refused in previous months to allow the Security Council to take action against the Assad regime. They protected their ally in Damascus, and they vetoed UN resolutions which could have potentially prevented this tragedy. And Russia just continues to state their narrative that this was the sad result of an airstrike on a munitions facility and that the chemical weapons belong to rebelling forces in that area who have had control of the ground situation, rather than saying that this was the result of a direct chemical attack. And the evidence that the UK brought to the table was that there were no fires, there were no explosions that were visible until the Assad regime bombed out the hospital that was providing care to these victims. So here's the time frame, okay? The chemical weapons attack occurs between 11 and 12 in the morning that day. Then shortly after, the hospital nearby the attack is bombed. The hospital which is treating the victims of the chemical attack. This is concerted. This is something out of the Hunger Games, if you've read the Hunger Games, where first you drop the bomb, and then you have secondary explosives waiting to take out the first responders. This is horrific tactical maneuvering. It's designed to crush and demoralize your opposition. And it's a terrible, terrible thing to behold. But I think that the Trump administration is dead on by holding their cards close on this one, and I think that Ambassador Nikki Haley was absolutely right to lay this tragedy at the feet of the Russian Federation, who used their veto power on the UN Security Council to shield and to protect their ally. And we'll go real quick to that audio from the United Nations and Ambassador Nikki Haley. Now, I'm probably going to run over my break with this, but it is really important that we hear what Ambassador Nikki Haley has to say on this. Ambassador Nikki Haley, former governor of South Carolina, who I think is doing an incredibly good job wrangling the UN Security Council here and just bringing the Russian Federation to task for their unbelievable hypocrisy and their unabashed shielding of the war crimes of the Assad regime. They are allowing the Assad regime to carry out war crimes with impunity. So we're going to go to that audio now from Ambassador Nikki Haley, President of the UN Security Council.
It was interesting to hear of the talk from my Russian colleague about the independent investigations and the importance of them, because this entire Security Council decided on what the joint investigative mechanism would be and decided what it would do, and it was actually voted on unanimously. And the joint mechanism came back and said that the Syrian government committed chemical weapons acts against their own people 3 different times. But somehow now we don't like what the joint investigative mechanism does.
To give a little context there, what Ambassador Haley is referring to is the Russian Federation is now rejecting the findings of the joint mechanism or the joint investigation that they agreed to the terms of, that was voted on unanimously by the UN Security Council. And now that the results have come back from that investigation, they want to throw out the results of that investigation completely and continue to stand behind Assad and his criminal regime. So we'll go back to that audio now.
Having said that, I will say in the life of the United Nations, there are times when we are compelled to do more than just talk. There are times we are compelled to take collective action. This Security Council thinks of itself as a defender of peace, security, and human rights. We will not deserve that description if we do not rise to action today. Yesterday morning, we awoke to pictures, to children foaming at the mouth, suffering convulsions, being carried in the arms of desperate parents. We saw rows of lifeless bodies, some still in diapers, some with visible scars of a chemical weapons attack. Look at those pictures. We cannot close our eyes to those pictures. We cannot close our minds of the responsibility to act. We don't yet know everything about yesterday's attack, but there are many things we do know. We know that yesterday's attack bears all the hallmarks of the Assad regime's use of chemical weapons. We know that Assad had used these weapons against the Syrian people before. That was confirmed by this council's own independent team of investigators. We know that yesterday's attack was a new low, even for the barbaric Assad regime. Evidence reported from the scene indicates that Assad is now using even more lethal chemical agents than he did before. The gas that fell out of the sky yesterday was more deadly, leaving men, women, the elderly, and children gasping for their very last breath. And as first responders, doctors, and nurses rushed to help the victims, a second round of bombs rained down. They died in the same slow, horrendous manner as the civilians they were trying to save. We all also know this. Just a few weeks ago, this council attempted to hold Assad accountable for suffocating his own people to death with toxic chemicals. Russia stood in the way of this accountability. they made an unconscionable choice. They chose to close their eyes to the barbarity. They defied the conscience of the world. Russia cannot escape responsibility for this. In fact, if Russia had been fulfilling its responsibility, there would not even be any chemical weapons left for the Syrian regime to use. There is one more thing we know. We know that if nothing is done, these attacks will continue. Assad has no incentive to stop using chemical weapons as long as Russia continues to protect his regime from consequences. I implore my colleagues to take a hard look at their words in this council. We regularly repeat tired talking points in support of a peace process that is regularly undermined by the Assad regime. Time and time again, Russia uses the same false narrative to deflect attention from their allies in Damascus. Time and time again, without any factual basis, Russia attempts to place blame on others. There is an obvious truth here that must be spoken. The truth is that Assad, Russia, and Iran have no interest in peace. The illegitimate Syrian government, led by a man with no conscience, has committed untold atrocities against his people for more than 6 years. Assad has made it clear that he doesn't want to take part in a meaningful political process. Iran has reinforced Assad's military, and Russia has shielded Assad from UN sanctions. If Russia has the influence in Syria that it claims to have, we need to see them use it. We need to see them put an end to these horrific acts. How many more children have to die before Russia cares? The United States sees yesterday's attack as a disgrace at the highest level, an assurance that humanity means nothing to the Syrian government. The question members of this council must ask themselves is this: if we are not able to enforce resolutions preventing the use of chemical weapons, what does that say for our chances of ending the broader conflict in Syria? What does that say of our ability to bring relief to the Syrian people? If we are not able to enforce resolutions preventing the use of chemical weapons, what does that say about our effectiveness in this institution? If we are not prepared to act, then this council will keep meeting month after month to express outrage at the continuing use of chemical weapons, and it will not end. We will see more conflict in Syria. We will see more pictures that we can never unsee. I began my remarks by saying that in the life of the United Nations, there are times when we are compelled to take collective action. I will now add this: when the United Nations consistently fails in its duty to act collectively, there are times in the life of states that we are compelled to take our own action. For the sake of the victims, I hope the rest of the council is finally willing to do the same. The world needs to see the use of chemical weapons and the fact that they will not be tolerated. Thank you.
Now, we've run a little long, but I want you to know that those stirring words, though they were spoken in the voice and in the form of Ambassador Nikki Haley, and she delivered them quite eloquently and quite well, those words and that message originated from the White House. Every jot and tittle, every stitch and sentence was reviewed and was approved by the President. Combining the President's statement with the King of Jordan with Ambassador Nikki Haley's remarks at the United Nations and her admonition of the Russian Federation, I don't see how there can be any doubt that we are at loggerheads with the Russian Federation and with the Islamic State of Iran. Sorry, the Islamic Republic of Iran. Let me get that right. And with the Syrian Arab Republic. Unity is required of the American people now. Because make no mistake, and I say this without hyperbole and without poetic license, it is my firm belief that we stand again on the brink of war. More on this when we come back from this short break. You're listening to the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. Hey everyone, this is Matt Holloway, and I hope you're enjoying our podcast so far. It's been exciting putting this together for you, and I'm looking forward to many more to come. I did want to let you know that in setting up the HoloNet and getting everything launched here, we've gone ahead and set up a page on Patreon.com. Now, if you haven't heard of Patreon, Patreon is a website that's similar to other crowdfunding sources that allows you to support on a month-to-month basis those sources, those artists, and those groups that you really care about and that you're passionate about. And I hope that we can ignite passion in a lot of people to become more involved in the political process, and also to become involved in the conversation and to keep that political dialogue alive. So I'd like to humbly ask you today to consider becoming a patron of the HoloNet on Patreon.com, and you can access that at Patreon.com/TheHoloNet. We have various levels of patronage. You can become a patron for as little as $1 a month, which unlocks exclusive content for the Patreon community, such as a feed of patron-only content. Then you have a $5 option, which gives you behind-the-scenes access to blog about the different inspirations that we have. It'll give you access to patrons-only polling. And then we have a $10 option, which gives you a signed digital poster plus everything else. $20 option, which gives you name in the credits on the site, and all other rewards. And we even have a segment sponsor package available on Patreon, which is $125 a month, which entitles you and your business to a 60-second ad as a segment sponsor during the podcast, of course, subject to content approval. So if you would like to become a patron of the HoloNet, we would be greatly thankful to you, and it's going to go toward a solid cause of generating this sort of millennial constitutional conservative content that is so lacking in our media today. So thank you for your time, for your consideration, and for being a part of the HoloNet. Here we hold the line against the night, and the millennial conservative resistance begins here.
You're listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The millennial conservative resistance begins here.
And we're back. Now, I know we left that segment a little bit heavy, but I don't back away from what I just said. I believe this nation, this world, is gearing up for a collision of biblical proportions, and I don't use that phrase lightly, because this is the kind of battle that is called for. I mean, this, without overstating it, this is Ragnarok. This is Armageddon. This is the battle that, unfortunately, ISIS, based on their apocalyptic mythology, and Iran, based on their modest mythology, Not modest, M-O-D-I-S-D-E-S-T, but M-A-H-D-I-S-T, as in the Mahdi, the 12th Imam. This is what they want. They want the Western world to come to Syria with war. And this is how you get it. This is how you get it. Because Bashar al-Assad is gassing his own people indiscriminately in the hundreds with lethal toxins, with chlorine gas, also known as mustard gas, that was outlawed after World War I when it murdered men by the tens of thousands in the trenches of France, and now has switched to sarin gas, which was previously used by Saddam Hussein against the Kurds and against the Iranians. And this vaunted ceasefire that was put into place by Russia and by Iran as the guarantors of the ceasefire. Now, as guarantors of the ceasefire, what repercussions have the Iranians and the Russians loosed upon Bashar al-Assad? Nothing. Silence. It is my firm belief that absent action from the United Nations and from the international community, we will see direct action by the United States, by the United Kingdom, and by France, who have put out the draft resolution to the Security Council that Russia will no doubt veto once again. Unity is required now, my friends. Unity not just with our fellow conservatives, although we need to mend that fence and we need to mend it quickly. This bollocks about President Trump going head-to-head against the Freedom Caucus has to stop now. We have bigger problems, kids. I understand. I get it. If you're down with socialized medicine, you're not a conservative. I'm sorry. That's what it is. And I understand that approximately a third of Republicans polled now are in favor of a single-payer system. Sorry, folks. They don't mesh. But now is not the time. This is the absolute best time in the world for people like ISIS and for people like Bashar al-Assad and people like the Russian Federation and Vladimir Putin and Iran to start crap overseas because we're divided at home. Because we can't even get our own house in order within the Republican Party and within the conservative movement, and the liberals are pitching an absolute fit with people like Senator Maxine Waters sitting here calling for the impeachment of the President of the United States, groundlessly referring to nebulous claims about Russian coercion. We'll go to audio from CNN with Maxine Waters.
We want to know whether or not there was collusion. We want to know about the hacking into the DNC and the interference with our elections. And I really want to know, because I know if we can prove collusion that he is impeachable. A lot of people don't want to talk about that, but I do. I want to talk about him. I want to talk about this Kremlin clan that's around him. And I think that those people, Republicans, people in some of the small towns and rural communities that are standing with him now, they're not going to be able to stand with him when they understand the danger he is to our country.
Are Democrats...
Now, I'm sorry, I gave Maxine Waters a promotion that we never want to give her. I called her a senator. She's a representative in the House right now, calling for the impeachment of President Trump. Now, I just want to point out to everybody how impeachment is what nobody wants. Nobody wants the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, to get impeached right here, right now. Here's why. Okay? Here's why. According to the Presidential Secession Act of 1947, otherwise known as 3 U.S. Code, Section 19, vacancy in offices of both the President and Vice President. Here's how that looks, okay? If you impeach the President of the United States, the Vice President becomes President. You'd have President Mike Pence. and they appoint a new vice president. By tradition, it would likely wind up being Speaker of the House Paul Ryan. If you manage to wrap up Vice President Mike Pence in the same allegations and also impeach him for the same reason and get him out of office, then you wind up with President Paul Ryan as second in the line of succession. If, for some amazing reason, you manage to impeach Paul Ryan as well, or Paul Ryan declines to accept the office of President of the United States, dear God in heaven, you wind up with the President pro tempore of the Senate, Senator Orrin Hatch, becomes President of the United States. I don't want to live in a country where Orrin Hatch is president. I don't know about you, and I'm pretty sure the shock would finish him off anyway. Following that, you get Rex Tillerson, Steve Mnuchin, James Mattis, which would be, I'm not going to lie, pretty awesome to have President James Mad Dog Mattis, but maybe in a couple of years. Jeff Sessions, Ryan Zink, the Secretary of the Interior, and it takes you 8 people. Actually, Ryan Zink is not confirmed yet, so it takes you 7 people. 7 people need to be impeached before you get to a Democrat, liberals. And then it's Mike Young, Secretary of Agriculture. So think about that. Who actually wants impeachment here? It's not going to change things. You're not going to suddenly get everything that you wanted under Hillary Rodham Clinton. No. You're going to get Republicans who are going to continue along the same trajectory of rolling back Obamacare because that's what the Republican grassroots demands. They're going to roll out tax reform because that's what the people demand. You're not going to get a liberal regime if you impeach President Trump. And you're certainly not going to help matters either by doing so through these nebulous claims that are made up of absolutely nothing. So far, that's all it is, claims. If there were evidence, there would be an impeachment by now. There would be a prosecution by now. All we have is posturing from Comey. I want a complete and thorough investigation of all of these Russian ties, just the same way I wanted a complete and thorough investigation of Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. I want this to go through all of the motions that it has to prove out at the end of the day that they're bunk. I want this to get to the end of the road and completely vindicate absolutely everyone who stood up and said this is bull. So yes, press forward with the congressional investigations, with the House panel, with the Senate Intel panel, with the investigations from the FBI, the NSA, the CIA. Do it all. So we can put it behind us and unite as a people, not just as a conservative movement, but unite across party lines because, folks, we've got more important things to do. I'm tired of turning on my television and seeing dead Syrian children. I don't know about you. I'm tired of hearing about the refugee crisis that's overwhelming Europe because Syrians can't return to their homes and because ISIS has infiltrated the stream of refugees that is flowing out of that area and inserted terrorist cells into them that have plagued Brussels, Nice, Paris, Germany, Sweden, and have attempted to achieve strikes here in the United States, no doubt, that have been foiled or aborted due to our increased security measures. We have big problems coming. In my heart, I feel it. That is why, on April 22nd, I'm going to be out in front of the Phoenix Capitol. And I'm going to be telling a lot of people who supported President Donald Trump from the beginning, a lot of patriots, a lot of good people, some things that they don't want to hear. Just like I'm going to tell you right now. Have you lost friends because of politics in the last 6 months, a year, 18 months, 2 years? Do you have family you can't talk to now? Do you have conservative friends you don't talk to anymore? Do you have liberal friends or libertarian friends that won't talk to you anymore because you've supported President Trump? Or because you're against President Trump? The time for polarization is over. The time for balkanization is over. The time for Never Trump has ended. If you want to protest, that's wonderful. Protest. Protest peacefully. Make your voice heard. I'll celebrate it. Even if I find what you say completely offensive, I'll die for your right to say it. As long as you do so peacefully and respectfully. But that's why I'm going to the Phoenix Capitol here, to the Phoenix rally on the 22nd. To tell the conservatives there that it's time to reach out across the aisle to the liberals. It's time for the Never-Trumpers to embrace the Trumpers. It's time to unite not just our party, not just our movement. It's time to unite our country because danger is ahead. The pieces are set and the board is ready. And Syria could be the matchstick that blows it all to hell. Sorry, I'm channeling my inner Glenn Beck there. But I'll be damned if this isn't one more of his predictions that it looks like is about to come true. Men like Beck have been saying it. Men like Rush have been saying it. Men like Hannity have been saying it. Men like Levin have been saying it. Other conservative commentators have been saying it for 10 years. They've been saying it. When President Barack Obama set his red line and watched as Bashar al-Assad walked right over it and did nothing because the Russians backed him and the Iranians backed him and he wanted that Iranian deal to be his legacy. It's all about legacy anymore, isn't it? It's a subject for another show, but here in Arizona, our new Maricopa County Sheriff Paul Penzone just closed Tent City. It wasn't enough that he retired Sheriff Joe Arpaio, who admittedly probably needed to be retired after costing the city and the county and the state that much in lawsuits. But it wasn't enough to take Joe Arpaio's badge. No, he also needed to turn around and close down Tent City, which was an enduring image of Arizona's toughness on crime. Ostensibly, he did it to cut $4 million out of the budget. Could have done the same by closing down a brick and mortar. An old prison like the Durango prison, which was built in '76, probably needs to be rebuilt and refurbished anyhow. Doesn't cost much to refurbish a tent. But that's what we've become in this country. We're about politics and posturing and legacy. Well, you know what our legacy is right now, folks? Dead children in Syria. Unless we get serious and realize that once again we are called and the fate of the world is at stake. Forces are lining up on either side of Syria. Will we stand by and do nothing? Or will we unite as a nation? Unite as the West and finally stand. I leave you with that to ponder. I hope you can sleep tonight. I don't know if I can. God be with you. God be with our leaders at this grim hour. A house divided against itself cannot stand. So I'll cap it off by saying good night and God bless. On the Lanterns Media Network, I'm Matt Holloway, and you're listening to the HoloNet Podcast.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.